We're going to begin with a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we're thankful for this morning. We ask for your Spirit's presence here and that you can help my internet stay connected. We know, Lord, there's many things we still have missed in the book of Ezekiel, and we just ask that as we complete this study over the next few days, that you can help us and guide us in bringing to remembrance the things that are of most importance. We pray for each person in their personal study. And we're thankful for this message and the responsibility that it bears. We just ask, Lord, that we can walk in the light that comes to us, that we can have your help in bearing these burdens, and that your character can be seen upon us. Help us to understand that we are Ezekiel and what that means. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So good morning, everyone. And I did have a little bit of internet connectivity problems there. So hopefully that doesn't happen as we go through this study. Now, to finish off the study dealing with the gates of the city, the first thing that I want to do is just look at some of these measurements again. And there isn't here as many things that I can draw from these measurements. At least I haven't been able to see them, other than we have the four sides of the city are being measured, and we know there's 3 gates on each side. And what's the measurement for each side of the city?
Well, it's saying in 4830, 4,500 measures.
Right.
So is that 4,500 reeds? Is this?
Yes, that's the way it would have to be, based upon previous places we looked, and also just the size of the city itself in relationship to everything else. There wouldn't be another way to interpret that. So the measures would be the reeds.
So why make the difference in the word?
Why did
they change the word?
Yeah, well, okay, good question. Do you have an answer to that?
No, I don't.
Yeah. I think part of it is just the way they're translating it. I mean, yeah, they could have used the word reeds, but they didn't.
Because if we're looking at 4,500 measures as being 4,500 reeds, the multiple on that gives us 567,000 inches.
Right. So if you take 4,500 and multiply it by 126.
Right. And then if you break it back into feet, you come to 47,250 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, 460,250 feet. Yeah. Now we know all the way around it's going to be 18,000 measures.
Okay.
Right. So, and which, when we looked at the city in Revelation 21, that when it gives the measurement, it's giving the measurement, the circumference, basically. So you have to divide that by 4. But it's basically a similar idea. So when it says 12,000 furlongs there, that would be the same as describing the 18,000 measures. So it's just describing the whole circumference of the city. But Revelation 21 doesn't give the breakdown directly of each of the lengths of the sides, or of the names on the gates. though we assume it's going to be the same names as in chapter 7. But so it gives us a bit less detail.
Right.
Now, let me see here. So we go back. And what was the other point there? So there's different ways that, that was the point of when it talks about the measures there.
Okay.
Part of that is the way that it translates the Hebrew. Now the Jerusalem one says 4,500 reeds by measure. So, and if you look at the Hebrew itself, it's not really saying 4,500 measures.
All right.
It's saying you measure it and it's 4,500.
Oh.
Right? Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. So it's saying the measure of the north side is 4,500. It doesn't say reeds, right? So it doesn't really say the measure is, or it doesn't say the north side is 4,500 measures. It says the measure is 4,500.
Okay.
So that word measure is the word extension. So it says it extends 4,500. So the word measure is not replacing the word reed or reeds. Does that make sense?
Okay. So are we then giving, are we using, if we're comparing scripture with scripture,
Yeah.
the definition, if we were to look at Exodus 26:2 and using that as our logic behind this?
Okay, so Exodus 26:2. And the length of one curtain shall be 8 and 20 cubits, the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits, and every one of the curtains shall have one measure. Yeah, so one length.
Okay.
Extension. Yeah, so that's the way that we would understand that word. So it's not referring to the measure. The word measure does not refer to a specific unit of measure, or like a yard or a foot or a reed or anything like that. Right? It just refers to the measure of it as we would understand it. So yeah, is that what you meant?
Well, that's when, again, using Miller's rules.
Yeah.
If we're looking to understand a passage, we need to bring
Right.
all of the verses, the pertinent verses together to understand this.
Right. So when you take this word measures, that's translated as measures, midah,
right,
and you can then look at all the places that it is in the Bible using the King James Concordance, which is using the Strong's numbers. My computer's just taking a bit to do that. Now it occurs 55 times in the King James, but that's one way. You can look at the dictionary definition, but you also need to look at all the places that it's used, just like you did with Exodus 26:2. And you can see that it's not referring to a unit of measure, right? So for instance, you got Exodus 26:2, you have, again, 26:8 of one measure. It's used in Josiah 3 verse 4, yet there shall be a space between you and it about 2 cubits by measure, right?
Josiah or Joshua?
Joshua, I meant, yeah. Joshua 3:4. Yeah, so it's going to be 2 cubits by measure, right?
Okay.
So the word measure does not refer to a unit of measure such as a reed. So when they say it's 4,500 measures, in that context, they're using it in a way that the Hebrew doesn't use it, right? The Hebrew doesn't use it as, a unit of measure.
Well, I guess I'm also looking at this because the word itself, midah,
Yeah.
is that not expressed in the feminine instead of the masculine?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's feminine. Yeah.
So we're dealing with something that is of religious significance not of temporal significance.
Well, yeah, I guess we could apply it that way. I mean, it's just Hebrew words are either masculine or feminine.
Right.
And
Except for a very few that are gender neutral.
Well, feminine kind of is gender neutral because they use the feminine also for the gender neutral.
Okay.
Right. So, if it can also mean it, right? Like,
Daniel.
Yeah, because when a word's feminine, it can be used to describe something that's gender neutral as well. Though, like in Daniel chapter 8, when you have that switch between masculine and feminine, because part of the issue is the Holy Spirit is also expressed as a feminine. Doesn't mean that the Holy Spirit is feminine.
Okay. So
they don't use the masculine for wind or breath or air. They use the feminine. But in Hebrew, you just really have the two genders. But feminine also is used to express genderless. So something that's not gendered.
Okay.
So that would be because there is no other term for something that's not gendered. Things are either masculine or feminine. There isn't a third.
All right. So what is your thought on the comment in the chat?
Yeah. So 4,000 by 4,000 reeds is 20,250 square reeds. Yeah. If divided by 144 equals 140625. In miles, the New Jerusalem is 375 times 375, or 140,625 square miles. Okay, so then what we're saying here, there's a relationship between the square miles and the square reeds, which is a relationship of the number 144. Right?
Okay.
Which is pretty interesting. So why does that relationship exist? Stephen, have you figured out why that relationship exists? Why, when we take these square reeds and we divide it by 144, and when we just look at the square miles itself, what is the relationship between these reeds and these miles?
Well, certainly in the context of the city, it has 12 gates.
Yeah.
And we know that New Jerusalem has 12 gates with the tribes of Israel as well. So you have that connection.
Yeah. So the 144 is the 12 times 12.
So.
Yeah.
So it's probably has a sort of, it's not maybe directly the same size as a New Jerusalem, but it has that sort of a relationship to it in some way through these measurements.
Yeah, through these measurements, because you got Ezekiel's temple and the New Jerusalem have this relationship through the number of the 12 times 12. Right. So I think it's pretty interesting. So one is now, okay, so yeah, so what we have is we have these square reeds, right? So, and you divide it by 144 and you get the same number of square miles. So the idea that 144 is related to time, you're saying is based upon the idea that there's, well, that's because there's, now the number of minutes in a day is 1,440. And that's based upon that there is 24 hours in a day and 60 minutes in an hour. And that's just a relationship of 6 times 24, right?
Yes.
Right. And 12 times 12 is going to give you that same relationship as 6 times 24.
Yes.
Right. Now, we also have the Hebrew measure of time, which is, they divide the day into halakim, right? So if you take this, now halakim is how many divisions of the day do they have? Do you remember?
25920.
Okay, so that's the number of the divisions of the day. And I was trying to look at this in relation to that. Now, what about the hour?
1080.
Yeah, 1080. Now, the number of square, I was trying to figure this out here. The whole city all the way around is 2,268,000 inches. And if you divide that by how many cubits that is, it's 108,000 cubits. So that's the number of minutes in an hour times 1,000. So again, we have this unit of time, right? The 1080 and the 1440 or 144. So this is just another evidence that we have time related to these measurements. Does that make sense to people? I know we didn't explain it well, but
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah. And we saw that in Acts 27 when they measured how deep the water was, these fathoms, and we had two different measurements that together added up to 2520. And the one measurement was 1080, and the other one was, does anybody remember what it was?
108, sorry, 1440.
Yeah, and the other one was 1440. So that's the number of minutes in a day, plus on our timekeeping, plus the number of divisions of the hour based on the Hebrew timekeeping. And when you add those together, you get 2520. So you have these two measurements that we see here in the gates in this city. One is taking the circumference, which is, so many inches, and dividing it into cubits. And then the other one is dealing with the relationship between, as Stephen was doing, between these two cities in their size, in this number by 144. So these do relate to time, the basics divisions of time. In this case, the length, the division of the day and the division of the hour itself. Now, we also know that Ezekiel relates to time because he's been giving us all of these dates. Now, I want to look at this paper, Ezekiel's prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem, and notice a couple of things. So there is a chart that I have up here. I'm going to have to share and unshare. So unshare and then share. Okay. Oops, that's not what I wanted to share. That's just for some reason that pops up. I'm not sure why that keeps popping up. I have this always popping up on my screen. It's trying to open up something. Okay, so I'll expand this a little bit. So here we have this chart. Now this is just the first part of the chronology from his first vision to the escapee. Now we'll notice some things. One is we'll notice there's 144,000 days from the time that Jerusalem is destroyed to the escapee coming to Ezekiel to tell him that he saw the destruction of Jerusalem, specifically the destruction of the temple. So it's 144 days. And I haven't spent a lot of time analyzing all of this. I do know that there is these periods of months, because you have some of these dates that deal with the 10th day. So you have a number of ones. August 15th is the 10th day, the 5th month, and it's 13 months from when he finishes lying on, or when he begins lying on his side for 40 days to his third vision. So it ends up being 13 months. And 13 is a symbol of rebellion. And Stephen, did you just share that with me, or did you share with somebody else regarding that, the symbol of rebellion? I think you just sent me an email on it. Can you reiterate where you, or did we do that in the study? I can't remember.
Well, we done it in the study. I mean, you mentioned Genesis 14, verse 4.
Right, yeah, it was in the study that we did, because we discussed it, right?
Yes.
So 13 months symbolizes, or in the 13th year, right? It's talking about. And so 13 ends up symbolizing rebellion.
Yes.
And so we can see here in the third vision, the September 1st vision, that's the one that's on the 10th day, the 5th month, where he's going to, for 4 chapters, basically tell them that they're in rebellion and that the city's going to be destroyed because of it. So the fact that there's 13 months between when he begins to lie on his right side, which is for Judah that he's doing this, that there's the 13th months to the 10th day, the 5th month, in which he again is going to reiterate that. And then we have 62 months from that date there, August 15th, 591 BC, to Jerusalem being destroyed on the 10th day of the 5th month. So the 62 months we recognize from where?
Daniel chapter 9.
Yeah, so that's from the 70-week prophecy. And of course, we found out a lot of things about that 62 months. One is it's 434 days, or 434 years, and we could use it as 434 days in the context of our line of the 777 days. And we could divide the 777 days, instead of just by 252 and 525, we could divide it in this other way. So just to show you that, I'll have to go here. I have a drawing of it. Somewhere. Yeah, so I'm just going to switch here, go to this other screen. I'm going to have to make this a little bigger. Whoops, that's not what I want. That's too big. I'll just do that. Can you see that okay, or do I need to make it bigger? Yeah, I'll try to make it somewhat bigger. Okay, that's probably better. So we know that we have this division of from November 9th to July 18th, that's 252 days. And then we have this 525 days to December 25th, 2021. And that comes from the 777 days from November 9th, 1989 to December 25th, 1991, which is a period from the fall of the Berlin Wall until the dissolution of the USSR. And what we noticed, well, this was a brother from Vietnam who quite a while ago had taken the study of Daniel chapter 9, basically dealing with the two Lamechs and the 777 that comes from that study. And he thought to divide this period of 770 days in that way. And so what he found is it marked January 16th, 2021. But at that time, he didn't have anything to connect it to. Now, we did have the 100 days of prayer from March 27th to July 4th. And there you can see these 13 days, which look like 14 days, and these 12 days that look like 13 days, or 13 days that look like 12 days, but depends how you count those days. And you have that symbol of 18,720 minutes. So that's an interesting thing about when we take these minutes and we multiply them by 13, by rebellion, we get this number 18720. So that symbol keeps showing up again and again. But it's these 10 days of prayer from the Seventh-day Adventist Church having 100 days of prayer, 187 days later, and if that you have this 10 days of prayer, and this 10 days of prayer then ends on January 16th. So it gives us that same division. So that number 434 is how many weeks? 434 days. From November 9th to January 16th. How many weeks is that?
62.
So it's 62 weeks, right? So we have these symbols. So 62 becomes a symbol as well in that context, because it represents as weeks 434. And it's also, when it's divided, it's 31. Right, and 31, of course, is when Jesus was crucified. And 31 is an inversion of 13. And when we look at the Mayan calendar, does anybody know the year that the Mayan calendar starts?
Is it 3113 BC?
Okay, so it's 3113 BC, or if you used, now, when we say that, we have to be careful because it's actually 3114 BC. But, and it's August 11th, 3114, if you use the Gregorian calendar, right? So the Gregorian calendar has a 0 year, so it'd be minus 3113. That is, you would write it with a minus sign rather than writing BC after it. But anyway, that's the year, right? 3113. And so it has those two symbols, 3113. And remember that we had tied, hopefully people remember all these things, but when we look at Exodus 31:13, we have a verse that says, "Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you." So where do we find this verse quoted?
Exodus 20, verse 12.
Okay, Exodus 20:12. And if we took this as a year, 3113, as the beginning of the Mayan calendar, Exodus 20:12, if that's a year, what happened in 2012? Oh,
The end of the Mayan calendar.
yeah, the Mayan calendar, we had that, the end of the, or I guess depends how you call it, but 13 periods of 144,000 days, which is called the Baktun. 144,000 days is a Baktun. And so here we have this verse quoted in Ezekiel 20:12. So this ties the Mayan calendar to this date 2012. And in 2012, the date that it turns over is December 21st. And that's the 1,872,000th day of the Mayan calendar has passed on that date. So we get that symbol of 18720 from the start of the Mayan calendar to the date in 2012. So it's tying these two verses together. And what are these two verses really emphasizing? Moreover, also I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I'm the Lord that sanctify them. So what's being tied together here by the Mayan calendar from Exodus 31:13 to Ezekiel 2012?
Well, it's connecting the Sabbaths.
So it's connecting the Sabbaths. Now, we also know that we have Ezekiel 20:20. And so what is the significance of 20:20?
It's very similar to verse 12.
Yeah. So this one is similar, 20:20. Hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God. Now, we also know in the year 2020, we have the symbol 18720 expressed as July 18, 2020, right? So the significance of this is, I think it's very hard for people to grasp, but we have something that is very, very unusual, and it unfolded in a way that was not expected. That is, after I had discovered that this date, July 18, 2020, was significant, I happened upon a paper by, his last name's Herman, and he was misusing, and I've told this story many times, but I was presenting it at Lambert Church on September 23rd. Or pardon me, is it? No. So that wasn't September 23rd. At Lambert Church, it was in November. So I'm getting two things mixed up. So it was in November of 2018 that I was presenting this at Lambert Church. And anyway, this paper by Herman, I was dealing with Ezekiel's Wheels Within Wheels, and this is a paper about calendars, and he refers to the Mayan calendar. Now, he refers to the date that the Mayan calendar began as August 11th, 3113 BC. Now, he assumed, because when you're dealing with dates in the past, that you're going to use a Julian date. So if you use a Julian date, you would say BC, right? If you're not using a Julian date, you would use a minus sign, right, as I stated. So what I did is I looked up 3113 BC, and I found that the symbol there was the 26th day of the fourth month. So it was the symbol that I had just used for July 18th. But he was mistaken. It wasn't the Julian date, because the Julian date there was September 7th. Let me think. I'm going to just look at my calendar converter. Now, the calendar converter that we have doesn't actually give the correct dates exactly for that period of time. Just because the calendar's calculated a little bit differently at that time. It looks at it monthly, not in a structured way, like a set number of days for each month. But if I go to this August 11th, here, I'm going to show you here, even though this calendar converter isn't. So this is the calendar converter, the first version that Troy Van Horn did. And here I have this date, August, right now it's on August 15th, August 11th. And you'll see that it gives the 26th day of the fourth month. Now you'll see the rabbinic calendar has the 27th day of the fifth month, and the Islamic is the 24th day of the fifth month. The Islamic calendar kind of drifts quite a bit as you go way back in the past. It's not as accurate in that sense. Anyway, you have this, pardon me, so there's August. So I've got it the wrong way. So this is August 11th, and you can see August 11th lines up with Tammuz 25, so the 25th day of the fourth month. But of course, this isn't quite correct, because when you look at the biblical calendar after the Exodus, it has a set pattern of 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29 for the first 6 months. The 7th month then can have various lengths depending upon observation of the first visible crescent. But back then they didn't give that. You would have to look at the first visible crescent. So when I actually looked at the months, August 11th, Julian date, 3113 BC, is the 26th day of the 4th month. Now, if you look at the Mayan calendar here, you'll see that it's not the start of the Mayan calendar. This number here, 17, you would multiply this by 20. So how many days after the start of the Mayan calendar would this be?
340.
This is 340 days later, right? So this is not actually the start of the Mayan calendar. Now you can see the Gregorian date says minus 3112. So if I go back a year, you'll, actually I have to go forward a year, pardon me. Wait, no, here, I have to go here, yes. And then I have to change to the Gregorian date of August 11th. And you'll see that now the Mayan calendar is at 0. So that's actually the start of the Mayan calendar. It's not 3113 August 11th in 3113 BC. It's August 11th in what we would call 3114 BC. But it is in the Gregorian symbol. In both of these, the symbol is 3113. Now, so from the start of this on the Gregorian calendar, August 11th, it's also the 10th day of the 5th month. So that was the other symbol I had for July 18, 2020. So right away, after I had discovered July 18, 2020, I found that the Mayan calendar had these symbols, both in the correct reading of August 11th, and it's September 6th. So what's the significance of September 6th? Anybody know? Is there a significance of it?
Wasn't that when Jeff began his apology and defense?
So that would be September 7th. So if we go to, so I'm going to switch over to back to this paper. And is this the correct date here? Okay, September 7th. So September 6th is the 5th day of the 6th month here. I'm just going to check this out. Did I do this one wrong? So I have a chart here on the back. I'm just going to look at this one. I know I can rotate this somehow, but I don't know how. Maybe if I know how to do it in this other program. Just hang on a sec. Okay, so I'll share it here. Okay. Yeah, okay, so it's September 7th as well. So there was a significance of September 6th, but I'm trying to remember how that went. Anyway, we're going to leave that for now. We'll come back to this because I thought this was September 6th, and then it moves to September 7th, but I'm wrong about that. I'm just going to check. Now that date is the fifth day, the 6th month, the 6th year. So the next day is going to be the 6th day, the 6th month, the 6th year. And what is that vision of chapter 8, verse 1 in Ezekiel about?
The abominations, the 4 abominations.
Okay, so it's these 4 abominations. And does it address the symbol of the Sunday law?
Yes, the last abomination, they bow down.
Right, to the sun. Okay.
Yes.
Now,
Christ.
now we know he has that vision on the 5th day of the 6th month in the 6th year of Jehoiachin's captivity, which he doesn't say in the captivity, but it would be, but it's actually in the center of the year. So it's in the first 6 months. You don't have to actually specify whether it's spring to spring or fall to fall. Now, we had in that story that he's going to take his stuff out, and that vision is going to end on the 6th day of the 6th month of the 6th year. Does anybody remember that? Or do you want to look at that again?
Might be worthy of consideration.
Okay. So, just hang on a sec. Okay, so if we go to, I'm gonna come back to some of these chronology points as well. So in chapter 8, let's go there. So he's going to have the 6th year, the 6th month, the 5th day of the month. And I remember watching one of Jeff's presentations. I think it was during Habakkuk's tables, Habakkuk's 2 tables, where he talks about this, and like it's so close to being 666, right? And I've always noticed this, even way back, before I'd started any of this detailed study, but I'd seen that date, and I always thought, why isn't it the 6th day? But when you go through, he's going to see all these abominations, and I think it's in
12, verse 4.
well, yeah, in verse 4. So he's going to see this vision, but there's a further vision where he has to carry out the stuff.
Yeah, chapter 12.
It's chapter 12. Okay.
Verse 4.
Right. So this is still under the same vision, right? So he's going to do this. And now remember in his first vision, he has this part of this vision where he's carried away, and we know that he's in vision there, that the vision has those 7 days, they don't change the date, right? So we're not taking those days as actually happening. So the chapter 4 still happens on the 5th day of the 4th month. But in this one, at the end of verse 11, he ends this. Afterwards, the Spirit took me up, brought me in a vision by the Spirit of God into Chaldea to them of the captivity. So the vision that I had seen went up from me, and then I spake unto them of the captivity of all the things that the Lord had showed me. So actually his vision of chapter 8 ends at the end of chapter 11. And then he's going to speak to the people, right? And then he's going to have this next vision. So this is going to be on the same day. And he's going to take this stuff out of his place and remove it by night. And so obviously in doing this, he's going to be switching to the 6th day of the 6th month, right? So in verse 12, and in the morning, the word of the Lord came unto me saying, Son of man, hath not the house of Israel, rebellious house, said unto thee, what doest thou? Right? So in my view of this, on the 11th day, he has this vision, and he tells, or the 11th day, chapter 11, the vision ends on the 5th day of the 6th month. And then he has a further vision on that day. And so this is describing the events that are going to happen on the 6th day of the 6th month. Does that make sense to people? The verse 12, or chapter 12, verse 8 tells us that this is the next morning. So this next morning would be the 6th day of the 6th month of the 6th year. Have I made that clear, or anybody have trouble with what I did there? Did I go too fast?
Go back over it one more time, please.
Okay, so we know that he has this vision on the 5th day of the 5th month in the 6th year, and that this vision, just like the vision in chapter 1, he's carried off into vision, right? In 8 verse 3 it says, and he put forth the form of an hand and took me by the lock of mine head, and the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and heaven, and brought me in the visions of God to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looketh toward the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provoketh to jealousy. So this is in vision that he goes to Jerusalem, just as he does in chapter 1 when he goes to sit, when he goes to the people of the captivity, right? It's in vision. It's the same kind of description. He's carried away. He's lifted up. Now, this whole vision from 8, 9, 10, and 11 is all on that 5th day of the 6th month. And at the end of that, it says, so this is going to be on that day. So he says, afterwards, the Spirit took me up and brought me in a vision by the Spirit of God into Chaldea. So he's going to now go, he was brought to Jerusalem, and now he's being brought back to Babylon, to them of the captivity. So the vision that I had seen went up from me. So now his vision is ended, he just told us. Then I spake to them of the captivity, all the things that the Lord had showed me. Now, we have made an assumption, and we're not the only ones who've done that Ezekiel dates his visions. So when he gives a date at the beginning and gives a series of visions, those visions happen on that day. Unless there is something that is not part of the vision, but in reality, that is bringing us to the next day. So when we get to chapter 12, God is going to say to him, Son of man. So he's not in this ecstatic sort of vision. God just says, I want you to do this. I want you to take your stuff to get it ready to remove by day in their sight. And thou shalt remove thy place to another place in their sight. It may be they will consider, though they be a rebellious house. So he's going to now act out this series of events. So just like when he lies on his left side for 390 days and then his right side for 40 days, we take that as actually occurring in reality. It's not just something that happens in vision. So the same thing here, when he acts out these events, they're actually happening in time. So this is on the 5th day of the 6th month. And now he's going to get his stuff ready during the day, right? So he's getting the stuff for removing and remove it by day in their sight, right? And then it says, thou shalt bring forth thy stuff by day in their sight, in verse 4, as stuff for removing, and thou shalt go forth even in their sight, as they that go forth into captivity. So he's going to act out like somebody who's going to go into captivity. And dig thou through the wall in their sight, and carry out thereby. So he digs it, carries it. And we remember when we studied this, that he was symbolizing what was going to happen to whom? Who was going to do this same type of escape? Does anybody remember how we applied Zedekiah, right? So Zedekiah tried to get out and not get caught. And so he's acting out sort of what's going to happen to Zedekiah. Dig thou through the wall in their sight, and carry out thereby. And in their sight thou shalt bear upon thy shoulders, and carry it forth in the twilight. So where is the twilight? What does that mean? Anybody know when this is happening?
After sunset.
Right. So it's just right after sunset before it gets dark. And so he's going to do this. And so he digs this stuff, takes this out at twilight. So I brought it forth in twilight, and I bear upon my shoulder in their sight. That's verse 7. And in the morning came the word of the Lord unto me, saying, so now which day is this? I mean, even at twilight, which day was it? Was it still the 5th day of the 6th month?
No,
This
it's
is-
6th day.
It's the 6th day. So this now is pointing to the 6th day of the 6th month of the 6th year of the captivity. So just like we did with his line on his left side, we could take those days and we could count them. Here it's just one day, but it brings us to the symbol of 666. So I think it's pretty significant. I'm not going to go through the rest of that, but so those are some of the symbols that can be drawn. Now, I was going to go to the Babylonian calendar converter here. So I think there was a discrepancy, if I remember correctly. Some of the times there's a discrepancy between the Babylonian calendar and our calendar. So 5, 10. Okay. So what year is this in? It's in the 5. I'm going to go back here.
It's 591.
So it's 591. And the date is the 10th day of the 5th month. So, 591 BC. I know you can't see what I'm doing. So September, so the one I want to go to is the September 7th one. That's in which year?
Yes, it's a 591.
591, okay. And then
But it's the 6th month.
the 5th month. Okay,
The 5th
so
day.
591, I have to go to the 6th month? Right. There's what
It's the
I'm,
fifth day, 6th month, 6th year.
yeah, that's what I'm doing now. And yeah, so it's September 7th. So I still get the same date. So I'm not sure what I did with that September 6th date. There was something about that September 6th date. Anyway, I'll go back to this paper. So some other observations regarding these time. So these time spans here. So we had the 62 months, we had the 40 days. And the 62 months, of course, there's 13 months, 29 months, 20 months. The significance of that, I don't know. I have also numbers of days counted out on the bottom. Now this is 80 months from his first vision to the escapee coming. What would the significance of the number 80 be?
We've recognized there's 80 priests that help the high priest with King Uzzah when he's leprous.
Right, and so we use the number 81, right, to represent, what does it represent, the number 81? have we used it as a representation? Because you have the high priest is 1 plus 80 priests.
81 is midnight.
And why is 81 midnight?
Ellen White was 81 at her last general conference.
Yeah. Okay. And any other reasons 81 is midnight? I mean, I think we use it, the number of the priest, to sort of symbolize that. Anybody else got any remembrance of how we use 81?
I think there was 81 years between some of the dates on the charts. I think it was from 538 to 457.
Yep, that's 81 years. Yeah, there was some other reasons. I can't think of them all right now. But we've run into 81, and of course 80 here I think would be a symbol of the number 8. Now, if you look at the first day of the 5th month on the bottom of this chart, what is the first day of the 5th month marking there? It's August 8th, 8/8. What is it marking? Does anybody know? This is a prophecy against Tyre, right? Was on the first day of the 5th month. Yeah, the first day is also the 8th day. I guess that's another symbol for 81. Anybody remember what chapter this is in Ezekiel? Where it talks about the first day of the 5th month? How about Ezekiel 26?
Yes.
Okay. So it says, it came to pass in the 11th year, in the first day of the month, that the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, because that Tyrus has said against Jerusalem, Aha, she is broken. That was the gates of the people. She has turned into me. She has turned unto me. I shall be replenished. Now she is laid waste. So this is when Tyre is mocking Jerusalem. And why are they mocking Jerusalem?
The temple and the city's been destroyed.
No, the temple and the city had not been destroyed yet.
Oh, sorry, the walls have been broken down on
right,
the ninth
the
and
wall,
4th.
yeah. So the walls have been broken down, and that happened on the 9th day of the 4th month. And now it says it came to pass in the 11th year on the first day of the month. So which month would this be? Doesn't tell us the month.
Yeah, it would be the 5th month.
It would be the 5th month. Now, if it was the 6th month, they would have not said she is broken. That was the gates of the people, because there it's talking about it being broken. The walls were broken into, right? That's what happened on the 9th day of the 4th month, which was July 18th, 586 BC. And on August 17th, then the walls are, the city is going to be destroyed, in the temple specifically. So this is in between the time that the walls have been breached and the temple is going to be destroyed. That Tyre is going to mock. Okay, that makes sense to people? And that it's the first day of the 5th month. Now, I came to understand this when the movement was looking at all the first days of the 5th month. So what happens on the first day of the 5th month? When is it first mentioned? In the Bible.
Weren't we looking at Ezra?
Okay, there is Ezra. That's not the first place.
Is it the death of Aaron?
Okay, so let's look it up. It is the death of Aaron. So it's in the 40th year after the children of Israel come up out of the land of Egypt, in the first day of the 5th month, right? Now we know the other first day of the 5th month is Ezra 7:9. That's when it's referenced. So we have these two places that it's mentioned. But I noticed that this prophecy against Tyre was the first day of the 5th month. So even though it didn't say the 5th month, I knew it was the 5th month based upon the context. So that was another witness. So what would be the significance of connecting the first day of the 5th month here with Ezra 7:9 and Numbers 33:38 with the death of Aaron? Why are these connected? Because we said as a symbol, the first day of the 5th month means something. It's in Millerite history, right? It's the date that we have the midnight cry, August 15th. But now we have it tied here to the death of Aaron, and we have it tied to when Ezra leaves Babylon. So how is it tied here to this event here, this prophecy against Tyre that happens on the first day of the 5th month for mocking Jerusalem, the gates of the city being broken into?
Okay, first day of the 5th month with Aaron would mean that their sojourn out of Egypt was about to end because they were about to come into the promised land.
Yes. Okay.
I'm trying to tie that back with what you just said about this, about Ezra leaving on the first day of the 5th month, because doesn't he arrive on the first day of the 5th month?
Oh, yeah, he arrives on the first day. Yeah. So he leaves on the first day of the 1st month. He arrives at the first day of the 5th month.
Okay.
Yeah. So right, it ends up with the arriving, right? It's attached to the arriving. Now, so, and I'm always ahead of myself, so that's why I'm so does anybody know what the date was on the first day of the 1st month when they left Babylon?
No.
Okay, it was April 26th. Right, so April 26th is the 26th day of the 4th month, right, on our calendar. Does anybody know the date that they left Egypt, which was the 15th day of the 1st month, on our calendar, on the Julian calendar? Which date did they leave Egypt?
Was it the 26th of April?
Yes, April 26th. So we can see here that we can take this date on our calendar, which aligns with the first day of the 1st month in Ezra 7:9. And we can take that same date and we can connect it when they left Egypt, April 26th. And then when Aaron dies on the first day of the 5th month, we can see that that lines up when they arrive at Jerusalem. Does that make sense, Dwight? I don't hear
Yes.
you. Okay. Yeah, and it's pretty amazing actually, right? That you can connect these just by using two different calendars.
But it also means that this is not a coincidence.
Right, it's not a coincidence. Okay. Now, if you look at that year, 457 BC, it's one of those years in which the leap month is added, and it's added at the uttermost extremity. That is, the first day of the 13th month is March 27th in 457 BC. And it's very, very close to being the first day of the 1st month. If the spring equinox and the sighting of the first visible crescent had been a day off, you would have actually not added the 13th month. So they could have had the first day of the 1st month being March 27th, which is a symbol of the message to the Levites. But instead, in that year in 457, you would have added that extra month. And so that brings it to the 26th day of the 4th month, becoming the first day of the 1st month. So even that coincidence, tying these symbols, 273 and 264 together in 457 BC. But right now we're focused on this first day of the 5th month. So we can see that it refers to this arrival in both of these instances to basically the completion of a journey. Let's put it that way, right? So why in Ezekiel 26 is the first day of the 5th month now referenced? What has happened here? What is the connection in Ezekiel 26? Because this is just Tyre mocking Jerusalem. And we know that, of course, the walls of the city were broken down on July 18th, 586, which was the 9th day of the 4th month. And now here on the first day of the 5th month, Tyre's going to mock. And then 10 days later, you're going to have the temple being destroyed. So what's the significance? How could we tie this together with these other two symbols of the first day of the 5th month?
Okay, if the other two are symbolizing arrivals,
Mm-hmm.
then could this be I hate to think of it in the opposite, but is this a departure?
Yeah, I would think it just becomes a mirror.
Okay.
Now, we can look at it as it's the completion of this journey that they had. So there was these 40 years they were wandering into the wilderness. And now on the first day of the 5th month, Aaron dies. Now, of course, Aaron dying isn't a nice thing, but we know that that's marking the completion of that generation, so to speak, because Aaron started that generation, right? With his birth, he started the 4th generation of the Levites, and now he's going to die. So that completion of that 4th generation has occurred, and now they're going to enter into the promised land. Things are going to be passed over to Joshua, right? Now, on the first day of the 5th month in Ezra, they've completed this journey. Now, this journey is how long?
You've got 4 months, don't you?
Yeah, 4 months, right? So the other one was 40 years, and this is 4 months. So you have that symbol of the number 4 that happens. And now when he gets there, he's actually going to begin the setting up of the administration. So he's going to be enacting this civil administration responsibility that's been given by the decree of Artaxerxes. And it's going to take a period of time to do that. And it's going to be clear on the 20th day of the 9th month. So 3 days after he arrives to Jerusalem, they bring the gold and silver to the temple. And then it's going to be a period of time that he's examining what's happening, setting up all the magistrates and so forth, so that when he makes that decree in 3 days for people to come to Jerusalem for the repentance regarding the marriage to the strange wives, that it's on the 20th day of the 9th month. And the center of that is, of course, the 10th day of the 7th month. So there's a bunch of structure there. But the point is that it's this end of this journey. Now, if we go to Ezekiel has started this. He started something that's now going to end, and that he's announcing that end. So what is it that this prophecy of Tyre is addressing? So because it's Tyre that's doing this mocking.
Would it be that it's announcing the end of the Hebrews as God's denominated people?
Okay. Okay, well, here they're not going to be in this history. They're not going to be the end of God's denominated people, because they're still going to be God's denominated people. But it is going to be, now we already know that Zedekiah has been taken captive, right? So that happened prior to this, when the walls of Jerusalem were broken down. Zedekiah has now been taken captive. So the battle is over. The siege has ended, and and I think that this is marking the end of the siege, even though the end of the siege happens on the 9th day of the 4th month. This is more a pronouncement of the end of that whole period. I don't know how to explain it, because Ezekiel has been prophesying, and we know in chapter 24 that he's told to mark this day, the 10th day of the 10th month, is when the siege begins, right? So the next date that Ezekiel has is this date on the 1st day of the 5th month. Does that make sense? So Ezekiel doesn't give us the date for when the walls of Jerusalem are broken down. He gives us this date, 26, pardon me, that when Tyre mocks, it's going to be on the 5th day or the 1st day of the 5th month. So the question is, why doesn't he give us the date that the walls are broken down, but he gives us the date for the mocking of the breaking down of the walls? Because he's starting with the siege, because that's what he's prophesied. He's prophesied specifically to the date of the siege itself, right? So God tells him to write down this date. The siege has begun, and he's going to be made dumb, and he's going to just do these prophecies against these pagan nations. And now he's going to start this prophecy against Tyre. And the question is, why does God choose this date for Ezekiel to reference that Jerusalem is being broken down? Why doesn't he just tell them on the 9th day of the 4th month, the walls of Jerusalem have been broken down. This siege that you prophesied that began, it has now ended. Why is he giving him this vision here now? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Well, it takes time for Tyre to hear about Jerusalem.
Okay, well, it takes time for Tyre to hear, so that's true, and it would probably be just about the time that it would take if you had, because Tyre is not that far from Jerusalem, right? Where Babylon is quite far away. It's quite a journey to go to Babylon, but to go to Tyre, Tyre would have heard about this, not the day after it happened. It would take a few weeks, which is what this is. But why is God not just telling him, just like God told him when the siege began, the very day, he said, this day has the siege begun. Why doesn't God tell him on the 9th day of the 4th month, today the walls of Jerusalem were broken? Why does God wait? Now, you're kind of partially answering it, but why does God wait until Tyre mocks before Ezekiel is given a vision to know? Because Ezekiel wouldn't have known until the 1st day of the 5th month, based upon this vision, that Tyre has now heard about the breaking down of the walls of Jerusalem.
Well, it's a kind of judgment against Tyre that begins in the next, from this here chapter. You get, and then it connects to Satan as well.
Right. And who is Tyre representing here? You sort of answered it.
Babylon.
Already. Okay. So
at the end of the world, the papacy. Sorry, the papacy.
The papacy. Okay. And I don't have the answer to this completely, but I think these are really good questions that we need to ask, because we made a prediction. And what was the prediction that we were predicting?
Islam would be bringing destruction against Israel.
Okay. And we were predicting July 18th.
Correct.
Wouldn't it be really nice if Ezekiel had given us July 18th by telling us the date that Jerusalem was destroyed? But we don't have that in Ezekiel, right? We don't have the 9th day of the 4th month in Ezekiel, right? We just have this 1st day of the 5th month, which is after the 9th day of the 4th month. So you're looking at like 3 weeks later. And so, and if we look at this, I'm just gonna, I'm just going to look at it. You're not going to see it, but so I got to go along here. So I'm going to go to 986 here, and I'm going to go to so July 18th is the 9th day of the 4th month, and it's exactly 3 weeks. So how many days is that?
21.
Okay. So here we see something that we didn't see before. At least I never noticed it before. So we have 21 days. So on this diagram here, I'll go back to that. Because we're talking a lot about the number 21, right? And what is the significance of 21 days? Mathematically, Stephen. Or anyone.
Well,
3 by 7.
Okay, it's 3 by 7, right? So it's 777, right? Which is a symbol of our period of time, 777. And so if we think about what's happened here, we have this date, July 18th, but Ezekiel does not address it. Now I put it here on the chart, but Ezekiel actually doesn't mention that date. It's not a date that he mentions, right? He just mentions the event, but he mentions it 3 weeks after it happens. So we have July 18th connected to the midnight cry message, the first day of the 5th month, by a period of 21 days. So that is significant.
Yes.
Yeah, we we didn't notice it before, but in our lines we're starting to notice these 21 days and the significance of them in tying together these different periods. One of the things is the number 252 and the number 273 are 21 apart. And so that's become significance in how we're drawing out the dates on our lines. And it's been there for a while, but now it's becoming more and more significant. So we're starting to understand the number 21. But the other thing is that this date, the first day of the 5th month, is August 8th. And what's the significance of the symbol of 8/8 and August 8th? Anybody know?
did you change that date? I have it as August 9.
Yeah, I actually had a typo there. It's August 8th because I'm using the Babylonian calendar here.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it's August 8th. Yeah, it was August 9th on the first time I sent this out, but it's actually August 8th. So it was just a typo. So the symbol of 8/8, so we remember back in 2018, Tess was presenting the symbol of the 27th day of the 3rd month, or really the symbol 273, the number of the Levites. I was presenting some dates, specifically the 26th day of the 4th month, Josiah Litch's prophecy. And Jeff was dealing with the number 8. And if you remember, Stephen, I don't know if you remember, but when we first had this 252 days from November 9th, 2019 to July 18, 2020, what did Jeff do with that 252 days? Does anybody remember?
Did he connect it to the number 7?
He connected it to the number 8, to the priests and the Levites, 2 Chronicles chapter 29 and 30, right? So he took, and he had been trying all through the camp meeting in October, trying to present the number 8, but he kept getting sidetracked. And he never actually got to present it until we had these 252 days. And what he did is he divided it in half, and the center date there between the two was, I believe, March 14th. 2020 is halfway between November 9th, 2019. And so I'll draw this on the board so people can see it. I know I can visualize it quite well, but so it was simply this, is he had November 9th, 2019, and he had July 18th, 2020, and we had in the middle March 14th, 2020, and this is 252 days, and this is 126 days. Now the Julian date is March 1st. So March 1st is a symbol of 31, which would then be, this would then be the week of Christ. And then what Jeff did is he had this symbolized by the priests and the Levites. So that's how he did it. Now, what would be the significance of this? I mean, one is we have this 8-8. So this is what Jeff did, right? So this is priests. This is Levites. So why do you think he was doing this?
It was connected to do with the cleansing of a temple.
Right, so he was dealing with the cleansing of the temple. That's what he believed that was going to happen from November 9th to July 18th. So that was his initial response to it. Does this still make sense? Was he wrong? Is the question I'm asking.
I don't see that he was wrong.
Yeah, he wasn't wrong. It's just he made partially a correct application and partially just didn't understand everything yet. Is that a good way of putting it?
I think that it was that the light was partially revealed and partially not revealed.
Right. And so who then would this apply to in this period of time? Because November 9th, 2019, this is the closed door for the Omega. At least that's the way we would look at it. But what's happening during this time? Who is then, how is the temple being cleansed?
Those that were not to be priests were being set aside. Those that were to be priests were beginning to take up their work and their understanding.
Yeah. Now, one of the things about this 8-8 and this August 8th, now, when we go to Josiah Litch's prophecy, and I mark, let's say in 1809, this is, 360 years from July 27th, 1449, right? And I go here July 27th, 1809. This is 360 years. And this is the 26th day of the fourth month. And this is the 26th day of the fourth month. This is actually a Julian date. Does that make sense? And this is a Gregorian date. Right? Because I'm going to go to the 26th day of the fourth month. Now we have an event that's going to happen in 1809 on July 27th, Gregorian. So 12 days before this date, on July 27th, we have the Treaty of Dardanelles, right?
Okay.
This is a Gregorian date. But the Julian date is actually the one that's marked as the 26th day of the fourth month. So what would the Gregorian date be that lines up with July 27th? So that means the event actually happens 12 days before the waymark. Does anybody know what the Julian date would be?
Would that have been July 15th?
It will be August 8th.
August 8th, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
the other way, the other direction, because this is 27 days behind. So when you get to August 8th, July 27th is 12 days behind. So there, August 8th would be 12 days later. Make sense? So this symbol of August 8th shows up in 1809, and it shows up again in 1839, which is the collective note, which again is going to happen 12 days before on July 27th Gregorian, but the Julian date is the one that's the 26th day of the fourth month, which is August 8th. So this August 8th becomes a symbol as well, tied to this, and it's a delay. Now, 12 days, what's the inversion of 12?
21?
Right. So to me, these are tied together. This August 8th date is some kind of a delay. And it's symbolized by 3 weeks. In this case, it's the number 12 days, but it's still a symbol of 21. Okay? Now, I know that's a lot of chronology and numbers and things, but what we can see here is that in Ezekiel's visions, the dates, the spans of time are all significant, and they all relate to our time.
So what you're saying
Yeah.
is the 12 relates to the 21, which is 777.
Right. And it ties us to the August 8th, which is the first day of the fifth month, which is a symbol of the midnight cry, right? Which ties us back to the 26th day of the fourth month, which ties us back to the prophecy of Josiah Litch that gives us July 18th, which the city is destroyed 21 days before this August 8th date, where Tyre mocks. And so the mocking of Tyre, what does that symbolize? So Tyre mocking us, what is being symbolized there?
Is that the adversary asking us the questions like he did with Abraham on his way to sacrifice Isaac?
Okay. Yeah, I think you could probably tie that together.
To me, it suggests this is the papacy.
Yeah.
Put in the Sunday law, and they're looking at our demise.
Okay.
In a sense, they're rejoicing over the Seventh Day Adventist Church falling.
Yeah, I think, and remember, our line is typifying something that's going to happen in the future, which I think that we're sometimes forgetting, right? Because our line, all the events that are happening to us, to this movement, because we're Ezekiel, we're acting out a parable. And now I would sort of take this August 8th as, even though this is the mocking of the papacy, I would actually relate it to the failure of July 18th as a prediction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because July 18th is obviously an important date for the papacy.
And why is that?
Because on July 18th, 1800 and something, they passed the
1870,
decree of papal infallibility.
Right. Okay. And so papal infallibility is a counterfeit of what?
Of God's true church.
Yeah, of God's prophecy.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, but here's another odd point.
Okay.
In the past, we've usually applied July 21st as being midnight, right?
Yep. And it has the symbol of 21 there.
Okay, but July 21st is 18 days away from August 8th. But August 8th is 21 days away from July 18th.
Right.
So which one is midnight, or are both midnight? July 18th or July 21st?
Okay, so July 18th is the prediction before midnight.
Okay.
And
So if July 18th is the prediction before midnight, July 21st is midnight.
right.
Is that when the midnight cry is to be given?
Well, the midnight cry is given at midnight, and it's also given on August 15th, on the first day of the fifth month.
Okay.
So I think the significance for me, when I look at Samuel Snow's letters and we look at July 18th, it is typifying of what's going to happen. So July 18th date typifies what's going to happen on October 22nd, 1844. Now, October 22nd is the Sunday law, right? But we know that July 18th is typifying that. But we didn't have a Sunday law on July 18th, right? So in our line, because we're typifying the bigger line, we know that there are symbols there of what's going to happen in a bigger way on a worldwide scale. But right now it's mostly internal, though we are connected to external events, right? Because these external events have been connected with our lines in various ways. The pandemic, the bombing in Nashville, the siege of Washington. These are all connected to our lines. But as far as Ezekiel is concerned, when Ezekiel is looking at this July 18th, this July 18th is the end of the siege. But he's not told about the end of the siege until 21 days after it has occurred, by giving a prophecy about the mocking of the Jews by Tyre. So he's given the start of the siege, God tells him that, but there's going to be this delay. And I think that what that delay represents is, in this movement, it is the delay from July 18th, the event that we predicted, to when it actually occurs. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Okay. So to
would that be sort of a tarrying?
Yeah, it's sort of a tarrying, but it's also the symbol of midnight. But Daniel, we know in Daniel chapter 10 that he fasts 3 full weeks, so 21 days. And I think that's the time that we're in, because he's going to be given his answer at the end of that 21 days. And we've already dealt with this in some ways, and we're going to go to it in more detail. But we know that that person that comes to Daniel is Christ. And we also can tie that to, from Daniel 10 to Revelation chapter 10. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things, and also because Daniel 10 is Daniel 12 as well. So that's the same vision, and which we often forget when we're reading chapter 10, what he sees in vision and what he sees at the end of chapter 12. Those are actually really the same vision. He's just seeing the end of that vision. So there's all these different things that we can tie together, and that we can see that Ezekiel represents this movement because he has the symbols of this movement. And so we can't just sort of brush these things aside. But, we have this 62 months, we have these 21 days, we have the July 18 date, we have September 7th in that second vision, which aligns with Jeff. We have the August 15th date and the July 21st date. And one of the things I've tried to make a point about Samuel Snow's letters is that Samuel Snow's letters really address the second angel's message. And if you look at Ezekiel, he's addressing the second angel's message, right? That's what it's all about. The first angel's message is implied here. And in some ways, the third angel's message is implied as well. But it's really about the second angel's message, the transition from the first to the second. And that's what Samuel Snow's letters provide, is the symbols of that, and the separation of the two classes, the two types of priests, which we see happening in our movement. And I don't think that that work is completed, that process is still ongoing. We haven't had the end of that happening yet. So even though we have July 18th as a symbol of that, as ending, it's actually starting a period of time that's symbolized now by 21 days. And at the end of that 21 days, which is a symbol, the mocking of Tyre, which here is the papacy in the bigger context, in this context, it's those in the movement mocking us. But then we have the destruction of Jerusalem, and we have 144 days, which is a symbol of the 144,000, and the escapee coming. And so what would the escapee arriving to Ezekiel and telling him, because we've studied this, telling him that he saw the destruction of Jerusalem. We know on that day that Ezekiel is going to again be prophesying against Jerusalem, but this time it's the message of restoration. So what's the significance of this 80 months that ends with the escapee on January 18th, which is 81? And it's an inversion of the 10th day of the 5th month. It's the 5th day of the 10th month, but it still has the symbol of 105. What is this talking about? So just to close it up, anybody can sum this up for us, what this all means, this 144 days and the escapee.
I'm going to have to give that a lot more thought before I try to sum some of this up.
Okay, well, we'll start with that question tomorrow morning. We'll look at this. We'll sort of tie up this part. I want people to think about it. It's 9/11, so we have to close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are thankful for this study time we had this morning. We ask that you can continue to be with us throughout this day in our study. Help us as we come together tomorrow morning to think about these things and to see how they apply. I pray that you can be with each person in the particular difficulties we have living in this world and the discouragements that can come our way. Help us to trust in you in spite of ourselves, and help us to walk in the light that you have given for our path, that we may glorify your name in all that we do. We thank you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.